Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you how to prepare and send an SMS message from your Expo React Native app. So first off, you're going to want to install that expo-sms package, and I'm just going to import useEffect because I'm going to use that to check at the beginning of my app starting and the first screen mounting as to whether SMS is actually available, because if it's not, I'm not going to want to be able to give the users the option to send SMS because it won't be applicable to them. I'm also going to import from SMS, expo-sms, so that I can check that availability and send SMS messages. So this useEffect function, basically what that does is it will be called once when you first load that app up. And what it's going to do is it will execute whatever code's inside the function passed to it as the first parameter. And the second parameter, if there was anything in there like state variables and it changed, then it would allow that useEffect to be triggered again. But because I've left it empty, it'll only be run once. I'm also going to use state because I'm going to want to be able to set whether SMS is available or not. So what I'm going to do is I've just got an isAvailable variable and a set isAvailable function. And basically when I call useState, it'll return those. And I'm going to set the default to false for isAvailable, which means by default I'm going to assume that there's not SMS available. Inside this useEffect, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and check the availability. So I've got this is available. So I'm going to call it is the SMS available so it doesn't get confused with the state variable. And I'm awaiting SMS.isAvailable async. And basically what that's going to do is asynchronously check if SMS is available. And then if it is, I'm going to set my isAvailable state variable. And here where I've got this text, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check if SMS is available. If it is, then I'd have a button where you could send an SMS. So I'm just going to import button. Just going to give that a title, send SMS, so the user knows what it does. And on press, I'll send an SMS and I'll define that function in a minute. And if there is no SMS available, I'm just going to show some text on screen that says that there's no SMS available. So now I'm just defining my send SMS function. It's going to be asynchronous because sending an SMS is an asynchronous activity. And to send an SMS, you simply go and await the SMS dot send SMS async function. And what you can pass in there is an array of different phone numbers you want to send to, and a message, and any options. So options could include things like attachments that you want to include. So those are the phone numbers I want to send to, and then I'll put the message I want to send. Send SMS async actually returns a status or a result. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get that result back and just console log it so you can sort of see what's happening. It's not always particularly useful to the result, but it could be useful in some cases. Okay, so what I've done wrong here is where I am rendering, I am using is SMS available, but I should actually be using my state variable, which is available. So just fix that up. You can see my send SMS button, but you can see I've got a warning here, and it says use effect must not return anything. So what's happening there is because I haven't actually made an asynchronous function inside my use effect, and it can cause some issues. It's not going to stop you from running it. It is just a warning, but it is better to go ahead and fix it up. So you can see there that I was sending my SMS message, but now I'm going to go ahead and fix up my use effect method. You can see if I open my app that status wasn't very useful, it just said unknown. So yeah, depending on your device, it may or may not give you a useful result, so don't rely on that too much. So here I am just creating an async function, and it's just going to be check availability. And I'm just going to move my code that's asynchronous into there and then call my asynchronous function. I can also remove this async here. So that's where it was returning the promise, and that's what was giving us the warning. So now if I send SMS, I'm not getting any warning. I can send that, and it'll send to the users I've specified. And yeah, that's pretty much how you send a simple SMS message. If I go back once again, it's still saying unknown. I want to show you this for iOS as well. But first I'm also going to show you how you can control like specifying the phone numbers and the message, because obviously you're not going to want to, well, in most cases you're not going to want to send to the same phone number every time. You might want the user to be able to input what phone number they want to send to or what message they want to send. So I'm just going to show you guys how to do that. So to do that, we're going to use some text inputs, and I'm going to have a phone number state variable and a message state variable. And I'm just defining those as undefined because I want them to default to nothing, and the user can input what they expect here. I'm going to add a couple of text inputs. The value is the default value, so that's going to be based off that state variable. I'm going to give it a placeholder so the user knows what to enter here. So the placeholder basically describes what should be entered in the field, and it will show up when there's nothing entered in the field. And on change text basically is a callback that's triggered when the text inside the text input changes. And you can use that to call that state variable setter, so set phone number with that value. I want pretty much the exact same thing for my message as well. But I'm going to give it a different placeholder, and I'm going to set the message instead. and the value will be dependent on the message state variable this time. Cool, so now you can see I've got two inputs there, phone number and message, but you may want to add multiple phone numbers. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just adding a button that's going to allow the user to add the phone number to a list. I'm going to store that list inside a state variable as well, and then I'm going to show it back to the user and give the user the option of clearing that list as well. So when you press on that button, what it's going to do is it's basically going to add that number to a state variable that I'm going to define now. So I'm just going to call this phone numbers and have the state variable. I'll call it recipients, and I'll have the setter be called set recipients. I'm going to default that to an empty array because I want the default to be to send to no one. I don't want to control who the message is sent to. So I've got my add number function here that I'm defining, and basically all that's going to do is it's going to go and add to that recipients array. I'm going to create a new clone of that array using the spread operator here. Basically what the spread operator does is it copies all those values in. It gives you a new instance of that array. Then I can go ahead and push on to the end of that array with my new phone number that's currently in the text input. I'm then going to clear the value of that text input because I'm going to want to set it back to nothing because the user will have added that recipient. And I'm also going to set the recipients to be those new recipients with that phone number added. So now that I've got that, if I were to go and click that add phone number, enter a phone number and click add number, it would allow it to add to that recipient's state variable. I'm now creating a function that's going to go ahead and show the recipients. And to do this, I'm going to use a very useful JavaScript function that can operate on arrays, and that's the map function. So basically what the map function allows you to do is map an array to basically any type of return. And so what I'm doing is I'm mapping the recipients array to some components that I want to render on screen, and those components will basically just be text that will be used to display what phone numbers are in the current recipients. So what I'm doing is I'm returning an array of components that will then be rendered on screen. I provide a key because when you're using the map it's good to use the key, and I typically use the index because I know that's going to be unique. So somewhere on the screen, I'm just going to choose a good place. I'm going to want to go ahead and show my recipients. So I'm just adding a little text so that it shows that the list of recipients is as follows, and I'm going to call show recipients. Also, if there's no recipients, I'm just going to want to show a little text to say that there is no recipient, so that it's not just a weird blank sort of thing following the recipient's label. I'm not doing any validation here, but if you were doing a more complex, complete app, you would do some validation here. So the issue here is that I haven't actually called that show recipients function. So if I fix that up, you can see I've got recipients and then it says no recipients added. If I go ahead and add some numbers here, then it will actually allow me to see the recipients that I've added. You can sort of see them there. Another thing that might be useful to a user might be that you might want to clear the recipients if for example you're like, oh, I've entered the wrong number, you might want to clear the recipients, or you may want to delete them line by line. I'm just going to show you clearing. Basically all you're going to do is update that state variable for recipients. So what you're going to do is you're just going to go set recipients, and you're going to set it back to an empty array. So if I clicked clear recipients, it will say no recipients added, and I could go and add new numbers again. So let's go ahead and add some new numbers. And I may add a message as well. So now I'm going to go ahead and change the send SMS so that it's using the values that the user has provided. So I'm providing recipients, and I'm also going to provide the message. If I go ahead and save that and click send SMS, then you can see it's sending to the users the numbers I've specified, and it's also got the message that I specified as a user. So now I'm just going to show you what happens if you open this on iOS. So on iOS Simulator, I believe that there's no SMS available. Yeah, you can see there's SMS not available, so it doesn't give me that button to send the SMS. You can also see it's styled a bit differently because it's styled specifically for iOS, but I can still use those inputs. I just wouldn't be able to send the SMS. So in that case, you might want to also hide those in that case. Another thing you might want to do is send attachments. I'm just going to install expo-print because I want to be able to quickly generate a PDF that I want to send as an attachment, but you could use any sort of file URL. I just find that expo-print is quite easy to use, so it's quite good for the demo purposes of adding an attachment. What we're going to do with expo-print is we're basically going to generate a PDF from HTML. So using the print package that we've installed, we're going to go print to file async, and we're going to provide the HTML that we want to be having inside our PDF file. What this is going to do is it's going to return a file URI, and then you can go ahead and you can send that using the SMS options. So you can send that using the SMS options in that send SMS async. And what you're going to want to do is you can specify the attachments. You want to pass the URI, and so that it knows where to get your file from. And you can also specify the MIME type, which will allow it to know what sort of file you're sending. Then you can also give it a file name if you want to. I'm just going to call mine hi.pdf. So if I go ahead and run that again, and reload, I'll just enter a few phone numbers, add a message, and click send SMS. So you can see there's an error here, and what it's saying is that it can't basically access that file. So I did a bit of research on this, and what I found is that you actually need a content URI when you're sending SMS messages. So I'm going to want to install this expo file system package, and what that's going to allow me to do is to get a content URI, which is the type of URI that's required when you're sending an SMS message. So now that it's installed, I can restart my application and open it on Android. Cool, you can see my app's all loaded and everything's good there. So now what I'm going to want to do is where I'm passing that URI, well, first I'm actually going to need to import from that file system package. So I'm just going to import star from expo file system, as that's the package that provides me a function to get that content URI. And then where I'm passing that URI to the send SMS async, I'm going to want to go ahead and get the content URI before passing that. So to do that, I can just use that file system package as I mentioned, and I can call get content URI async and just pass in my file URI. Then, instead of that file URI there, I can pass in that content URI, as that's what the send SMS async function is expecting. So if I enter a phone number, and if I enter a message, and click send SMS, it should send an SMS with my attachment. Okay. So I'm getting this error, unhandled promise rejection. So I think what's going on here is I'm having an issue where I'm passing something to my send SMS async which isn't expected. So I'm passing my promise, and also you can see that this console log is actually not a content URI, so I just need to add on a wait there. I just sort of missed that part. Now if I try send again, it should send an SMS. Yeah. So it sends an SMS with my attachment that you can see there. It doesn't work on this network because I've got just a simulator, but if I opened the attachment, you could see it mimicked what I had created. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial today. If you have, please like and subscribe for more content. All this code will be available on my GitHub.